Charles was large and strong, and of lofty stature, though not disproportionately tall. The upper part of his head was round, his eyes very large and animated, nose a little long, hair fair, and face laughing and merry. Thus his appearance was always stately and dignified, whether he was standing or sitting. Although his neck was thick and somewhat short, and his belly rather prominent, but a symmetry of the rest of his body concealed these defects. His gait was firm, his whole carriage manly, and his voice clear, but not so strong as his size led one to expect. His health was excellent, except during the 4 years preceding his death, when he is subject to frequent fevers. At the last he even limped a little with one foot. Even in those years he consulted rather his own inclinations than the advice of his physicians, who were almost hateful to him because they wanted him to give up roasts, to which he was accustomed, and to eat boiled meat instead. In accordance with the national custom, he took frequent exercise on horseback and in the chase, accomplishments in which scarcely any people in the world can equal the Franks. He enjoyed the exhalations from natural warm springs, and often practiced swimming, in which he was such adept that none could surpass him, and hence it was that he built his palace at Aix-la-Chapelle, and lived there constantly during his latter years until his death. He used to not only invite his sons to his bath, but nobles and friends, and now and then a troop of his retinue or bodyguard, so that 100 or more persons sometimes bathed with him. He used to wear the national, that is to say, the Frank, dressed next to his skin a linen shirt and linen breeches, and above those a tunic fringed with silk, while hose fastened by bands covered his lower limbs, and shoes his feet, and he protected his shoulders and chest in winter by close-fitting coats of otter or marten skins. Over all he flung a blue cloak, and he always had a sword girt about him, usually one with a gold or silver hilt and belt. He sometimes carried a jewelled sword, but only on great feast days or the reception of ambassadors from foreign nations. He despised foreign costumes, however handsome, and never allowed himself to be robed in them, except twice in Rome, when he donned the Roman tunic, chlamys, and shoes, the first time at the request of Pope Hadrian, the second to gratify Leo, Hadrian's successor. On great feast days he made use of embroidered clothes, and shoes bedecked with precious stones. His cloak was fastened by a golden buckle, and he appeared crowned with a diadem of gold and gems. But on other days his dress varied little from the common dress of the people. Charles was temperate in eating, and particularly so in drinking, for he abominated drunkenness in anybody, much more in himself and those of his household. But he could not easily abstain from food, and often complained that fast injured his health. He very rarely gave entertainments, only on great feast days, and then to large numbers of people. His meals ordinarily consisted of 4 courses, not counting the roast, which his huntsman used to bring in on the spit. He was more fond of this than any other dish. While at the table he listened to reading or music. The subjects of the readings were the stories and deeds of olden time. He was fond, too, of St. Augustine's books, and especially the one entitled The City of God. He was so moderate in the use of wine and all sorts of drink that he rarely allowed himself more than 3 cups in the course of a meal. In summer, after the midday meal, he would eat some fruit, drain a single cup, put on his clothes and shoes, just as he did for the night, and rest for 2 or 3 hours. He was in the habit of awaking and rising from his bed 4 or 5 times during the night. While he was dressing and putting on his shoes, he not only gave the audience to his friends, but if the Count of the Palace told him of any suit in which his judgment was necessary, he had the parties brought before him forthwith, and took cognizance of the case, and gave his decision, just as if he was sitting on the judgment seat. This was not only business that he transacted at the time, but he performed any duty of the day whatever, whether he had to attend to the matter himself or to give commands concerning it to his officers. Charles had the gift of ready and fluent speech, and could express whatever he had to say with the utmost clearness. He was not satisfied with command of his native language merely, but gave attention to the study of foreign ones, and in particular was such a master of Latin that he could speak it as well as his native tongue, but he could understand Greek better than he could speak it. He was so eloquent indeed that he might have passed for a teacher of eloquence. He most zealously cultivated the liberal arts, and those who taught him in great esteem, and conferred great honours upon them. He took lessons in grammar of the deacon Peter of Pisa, at that time an aged man. Another deacon, Albin of Britain, surnamed Alcuin, a man of Saxon extraction, who was the greatest scholar of the day, was his teacher in other branches of learning. The king spent much time and labour with him studying rhetoric, dialects, and especially astronomy. He learned to reckon and used to investigate the motions of the heavenly bodies most curiously, with an intelligent scrutiny. He also tried to write, and used to keep tablets and blanks in his bed under his pillow, that at leisure hours he might accustom his hand to form the letters. However, as he did not begin his efforts in due season, but late in life, they met with ill success. He cherished the church of St. Peter the Apostle at Rome above all other holy and sacred places, and heaped its treasury with a vast wealth of gold, silver, and precious stones. He sent great and countless gifts to the Pope, and throughout his whole reign the wish that he had nearest to his heart was to re-establish the ancient authority of the city of Rome, and by his influence, and to defend and protect the church of St. Peter, and to beautify and enrich it out of his own store above all other churches. Although he held it in such veneration, he only repaired to Rome to pay his vows and make his supplications 4 times during the whole 47 years that he reigned. The Romans inflicted many injuries upon the Pontiff Leo, tearing out his eyes and cutting out his tongue, so that he had been compelled to call upon the king for help. Charles accordingly went to Rome to set in order the affairs of the church, which were in great confusion, and passed the whole winter there. It was then he received the titles of Emperor and Augustus, to which he at first had such an aversion that he declared that he would not have set foot in the church the day they were conferred, although it was a great feast day, if he could have foreseen the design of the Pope. He bore very patiently with the jealousy which the Roman emperors showed upon his assuming these titles, for they took this step very ill, and by the dint of the frequent embassies and letters, in which he addressed them as brothers, he made their haughtiness yield to his magnanimity, a quality in which he was unquestionably much their superior.